Hold on a second. Remember when we thought war was on the decline? Back in 2014, we asked whether the world had moved past large-scale violent conflicts, citing trends suggesting that wars were becoming less frequent and fewer people were dying in them. The future looked peaceful until we checked back today. Now, a decade later, we're asking the same question, but the answer isn't as clear-cut. The world has experienced some brutal reminders of the past, such as Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the first major interstate war in 20 years, and the devastating conflict between Israel and Hamas. So, what happened to the peaceful predictions? In 2014, we made 7 key claims. First, there were fewer conflict-related deaths than ever. Second, wars between nations were practically non-existent. Third, democracies didn't fight each other. Fourth, most borders were stable. Fifth, most conflicts occurred in former colonies or areas once influenced by Soviet powers. Sixth, more civil wars ended through diplomacy. Seventh, we were in the most peaceful period in history. Let's see how those claims have held up. Looking at the last decade, many conflicts that were heating up in 2014 have either ended or cooled down. The war in Afghanistan ended with the Taliban taking control, while the civil wars in Yemen and Libya have reached a stalemate. The brutal civil war in South Sudan finally ended with a fragile peace agreement, though violence still flares up. On the flip side, new wars have emerged, or long-standing issues have reignited. Civil wars, particularly in Ethiopia, Sudan, and Myanmar, have cost countless lives, with some of the deadliest conflicts like the Ethiopian Tigray War leaving over 500,000 dead. While wars between countries may still be rare, they're not gone. The Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh flared up again in 2020, and Israel-Hamas has escalated into a regional crisis. The real shock, however, has been Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a full-scale interstate war not seen since World War II. Looking at the numbers, we're seeing a sharp rise in conflict-related deaths since 2021. From 2014 to 2024, roughly 1.2 million people died in state-based conflicts, triple the amount from the previous decade. 2022 saw the highest death toll from war since the Rwandan genocide, largely driven by the wars in Ukraine and Ethiopia. Despite these grim figures, if we zoom out, we're still in a relatively peaceful era when compared to history's bloodier chapters. The rise in interstate wars, however, has shattered the notion that wars between countries were a thing of the past. Most conflicts today still take place in regions with complex histories, territories once shaped by colonialism or earlier political influences. As for democracies, they continue to avoid conflict with one another. The trend in conflict resolution is shifting. Civil wars are increasingly ending in stalemates or outright victories rather than negotiated peace deals. Meanwhile, global borders have held up better than expected, though some regional disputes are heating up again, such as the ongoing India-China border tension. The geopolitical landscape has also changed. We're transitioning into a multipolar world, with new superpowers like China challenging the U.S. As military budgets shift, so do alliances and global power dynamics. Russia's aggressive moves have pushed Europe to rearm, signaling that the era of a rules-based international order may be over. So, is war over? Not by a long shot. While we are still in a relatively peaceful era, the future remains uncertain. Will the last few years of conflict mark a return to a more violent world, or are they just anomalies? We'll find out in the next decade. Stay tuned for our next update in 2034.